It tells me now, so I'm going.
Cool. Got it. We're ready with one C or one NC.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, we actually, are you guys good if we just start at 5:15?
Sure.
Yeah. Should be good to go. I will send case. It's gonna be a little bit fast. Clear me if need be, but everything's all well.
okay. Just one sheet.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It
Okay.
should have just been sent. And then let me know when you guys get it, and we should be good.
I think we see it.
Awesome. We need to continue to civil conflict, chillers, domestic conflict, new president, let's see, utilizing and recognition of its whole March 21st, the New Year's Deal, sunset, and the air, second country, the opposite, ruling, more cautious, material, market change, the forward, diplomacy, issue recognition with less aggressive engagement, traditional channels, and conflict resolved by 24. Somali forces developed by fighting is not started since the risk of conflict reigniting remains all Somali not in defense, has on 21. They're back like the one and only one supports secession, less than 20%, 80 do not support, so call themselves Somalilanders. In a post-secession recognition of Somalian consequences could be dire. Small scale fighting is broken in the defense, with 24 in the east, open fighting broke out in the last, and recognition of Somalian further exacerbates tension, soul region, Riksha, and conflict post FOA 24. The recognition of Somalian is intensity triggered new fighting across the recently set front line. So, secondly, is conflict with Somalia. Regional tensions are stable right now between News 25. On January 11th, Somalia and Ethiopia from the commitment to the UNCTAD declaration focused on diplomatic ties and security cooperation after its conflict. Somalian Chronicle 24. So there to wage war on the Somalian, framing it as an existential recognition could erase Somalia's territory within Norway's calculation. Canada 24 states take extreme measures as they feel existentially threatened. Mogadishu citizens to retake Somaliland at all costs. China gets Aid Muhammad 20. China delivered large-scale military aid to Somalia. The addition of Chinese vessels bring major warning bells for Somalia. The effects of regional conflict in East Africa versus the world. Army 24. Already back for the war and soon becoming even more unstable conflict around the United States, China military presence concluding the battle for global powers. East Africa's battle for international security war in the air puts the risk of the entire world. Global power leads to extinction. Clear 23. A modern great power, GC autonomous weapons deployed on unprecedented scale, threatens extreme misunderstandings, spark conflict that quickly escalates and relations have deteriorated. Contention 2 is aggressive dissenters. Egypt does not support Somaliland recognition. Hawaii 24 Egypt and Ethiopia would not tolerate any violation of the territorial integrity of Somalia. They lose control over trade. Down 24 Egypt maintains control of the Suez Tower. Growing Somaliland undermines so Egypt often creating alternative trade paths. Collaboration with Somaliland gains direct access to the Red Sea by river for Egypt, maintaining influence critical and existential for Egypt. Down 24 Ethiopia control is an existential issue for Egypt. Recent tensions of cold Africa. 24 Egypt's foreign minister discussed Red Sea developments in Somaliland with its Somali counterparts. Talks were successful in curbing further violence in the region. Athletes to conflict. Down 24 and Egypt to read our border to annex territories is likely to grow stronger resistance to escalate into armed confrontations. Conflict deterrence assistance. List 18 armed conflict reduces the aid of all types. Crosses like the Almy evidence tells you instability leads to great power drawing and therefore extinction per Claire. Contention creates forbidden fruit. Somalian government depends on the people for it. UBIC 12 Somaliland is never been recognized and eligible for the information of government. And Somaliland is deeply determined with building a viable tactic. Somaliland aid is low right after 21st Somaliland low Somaliland lacks access to direct access to aid. This maintains democracy. UBIC 12 in Somaliland dependency of the government. Local tax revenue keeps the tax to exceed constitutional limits and tax in check. Somaliland government is a product of political compromise. Somaliland's democracy is strong right now. Years 25 Somaliland operates a democracy holding regular elections that repeat elections have been peaceful, free, and fair. After inject Somaliland with aid. UBIC 12 ineligible Somaliland receive in foreign assistance double annual government revenues. It's a democracy. UBIC 12 foreign assistance dramatically diminish the bargaining power of the government, reduce the need to extend political franchise to them and appear to representative national government appearance for UBIC 12 Somaliland and individual foreign assistance to help the country avoid the problems that contributed to Somalia's inability to form any government at all. Foreign involvement helps creates a scapegoat for Somaliland leaders. Philip 16. Because there were no external groups, villagers had no external political cover, and local communities in the elite and the diaspora bring conflicting parties together for reasons authoritarian tendencies, stop cooperation, information, and incentives for security. Belfield 23. Totalitarian systems are bad at dealing with disasters, is at least strongly incentivized to conceal information, worse at addressing social, environmental, and technological problems. Totalitarian, less cooperative, lack of transparency, limited agreements, and worsens terrorism. Al-Shabaab is on the decline right now. Kiyagi 24. There's been a decline in Al-Shabaab linked to cooperation between security forces. There's been a significant improvement in deterrence and disruption of attacks, with 60% reduction in propaganda decrease. After revitalizing terrorism. Hook 18. Terror can be attacked for redeeming democratic religions and incompletely realized violence was a substitute for democracy. Cross-apply the Claire and Elmy evidence conflict leads to great power drawing in the region. Extinction. Okay.
Some of the money is.
You also do something?
Yeah. Talk us something, you know, you gotta. Oh, listen. Great. You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Contention one is framing truth is produced in subjective recognition of one another to incorporate and correct their alternative frameworks are incoherent because they can't account for the possibility of their wrong to say historical approaches can be worthwhile because they refuse the process by which truth becomes meaningful. That's 13. To arrive at truth, one to develop in negative, focusing exclusively on result cuts off from epistemology the process of right knowledge of achieve the historical dimension of truth that excludes the competing alternative truths that the subject and object are incessantly implicated through experience, recognition, and correction of error. The process must take into account all positions of consciousness eventually constituted of all encompassing truth. Participation within the state synthesizes individual identities, produce universal lenses, key to reconcile difference within the social structure that can establish and enforce good norms, to as of 2000. The stating always substantial unity in the element of difference for legislation is framed in the core with the shared conception of the good of difference is not suppressed, but incorporated individuals are capable of embracing these ends of the state only if they are experienced the world, they are also citizens of the source of self of the state must be a substantial unity which of individuals' relations to fellow citizens provides a universal project state embodies conceptual unity. They tie that bind citizens comes to legislating reason establishes principles universally binding consciously north and knows what it wills in this universality and acts for conscious ends. Recognition of and by the states are necessarily good and enables the realization of freedom and rights and negation of bad approaches to ethics. Williams 97. The statement consists in the synthesis of universal ethical substance with substantive individual freedom. The state allows to embody both freedom and the means whereby substance actualizes the state transcends and grounds morality in civil society as ethical life objecting any and individual morality left behind the bad is negated by reciprocal recognition. Freedom becomes reflected in positive relations to others. Authority is rooted in the fact that state is eminent and free will. State must be recognized as having the highest of the right. Individuals who are manipulated level of civil society recognize the ethical state as their common need. Concrete freedom requires personal individuality, gaining this recognition of their or the right of for its own sake. Just as individuals have a right to be recognized by the state, they owe the duty of recognition and return failure is a violation of the universal right to enter the states. The failure of institutions to live up to their respective roles is irrelevant. The right institution is perfect form is containing the idea of the imperfect institution. 190. The aim is not to tell the state how it ought to be, but to provide us with a rational theology of modern social life. Every state fails to be wholly rational because it fails to be wholly actual. The task of philosophy is to heal the division which prevents selection to open between our minds to the world by exhibiting the world to deeper and our rationality, although there is much in the transitory world of existence as not as it ought to be. The inner essence of things is fully rational, spiritually satisfying. Our forward-taken by thought can be reappropriated through our cognition. Ethics cannot be determined by empirics or the consequences they produce because good results are created by working them out collectively. Effective interaction are necessary to provide a good future. Determining how you come to truth is a prerequisite to evaluating the truth of the DA. McIntyre 72. Actions neither goals nor means to decide and then bringing about attention to my kind really means as a subordinate place only in movement goals are articulated and we can understand human affairs only after the event. The understanding of beings is not predictive and working out of failure prevents failure. The present can't satisfy reason the future is made. Historical narratives are not data, more the ultimate kind of knowledge. The effect past is present in itself in important ways. Lacking historical knowledge, self-knowledge will be limited. This self-knowledge can never be yielded. Will preempt extinction outweighs only our dialectical approach can produce meaningful relationships with nuclear war. The reduction of violence, accountability, embraces the interconnected process that form valuable futures. Cronbach 91. To comprehend and act like that might end in human history, we need to philosophical reflection which actualizes the present in relation to the past. The only approach to nuclear agents, dialectic, historical life has become the object of reflections about Hegelian disposition. We cannot make sense of but in existence deliberations to reduce a positivistic fact and critique of modern theorizing about knowledge is indispensable must come prior to any so-called rational attempt to conceive of future content is drained of its sense of humanity. The present must first be contextually related to historical context fast. Cut the card there. Yeah. Contention 2 is offense. International recognition is the starting point to develop self-identity to work out ethical norms through the state. Only by recognition of the other enables reciprocal integration of multiple perspectives. It becomes the basis of sovereignty and freedom. Buckwalter 12. Sovereignty takes consequence of freedom. People are free among objective measures when they affirm identity in the circumstances characterizing existence. Self-consciousness and self-identity are intelligible only with reference to other selves in relations to reciprocal recognition. When I perceive myself in relations, I acknowledge the other's recognition and integrate them into myself. Understanding the other's perception of me. Me must recognize communities other a means by which one culture requires insight into its distinctive self-identity. Self is a process of integration of conceptions and perspectives when nations need the recognition of by the other. Institutional approaches towards truth depend on self-determination legitimacy, which are forwarded by independence. Hall 12. Every state will fail of electoral authority, legitimate institutional capacity, institutional when it comes to the authority, population, personal institutions, which requires popular identification. Cut the card there. Recognizing Somaliland is a key to incorporate perspectives in the political institutions to establish a state building project. Hall 12. State sovereignty must be corrected if we go to fix failed states. Portions like Somaliland prevented from achieving statehood, even though they no longer desire share state with Somalis is only through recognition and incorporation of the immersion of pre-existing identities that state building can be successful. Affirm. Yes.
Is it cool if I take the first question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Just like for my understanding, what does the framing say about how to evaluate the neg, or how can the neg garner offense under your framing? Or can the neg garner?
So the main thing we say about the negative is that it is impossible to evaluate the consequences of the DAs until we first come to a truthful claim. Until we first come to an epistemology for how we determine truthful
So
claims.
we can't decide whether it was bad to negate until we've affirmed. Like, how does the neg garner any offense under this model?
Under this model, we would argue if the neg, I mean, it's probably very hard for the neg to garner
Okay, so
offense.
just to clarify, the neg cannot garner any offense under your model.
I suppose if you find an argument saying that the voting negative causes recognition.
Cool. You can do a question.
Okay. Let's talk about let's talk about terror real quick. You would need this Kiaga evidence about Al-Shabaab being down. Your evidence is all about counties in Kenya. How is this evidence that's exclusively about Kenya supposed to be cross-applied to the case about Somalia and Somaliland?
Let's see. Like, sure, we'd say broadly the fact that Al-Shabaab is doing bad around Africa is indicative of how they're doing in Somalia and Somaliland as well. Yeah.
But should we prefer evidence about Somalia to evidence about Kenya?
Depends on how they're around us. Can I take a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your argument like Hegel's philosophy?
No.
Okay, wait, why does every piece of evidence talk about Hegel then, and why is every piece of evidence specifically saying Hegel's dialectical philosophy?
He's a commonly cited philosopher, but this is ultimately each of our cards is representing the author's own ideas. Like, for example, take the Wood evidence, for example. This guy, he presents lectures about Kant all the time. His main discipline is actually Kantianism.
Yeah, but
so you can't really reduce all of our authors to Hegel.
Right. But when the Wood evidence is literally talking about Hegel's philosophy, it's explaining what Hegel felt. Is that, or Hegel's ideas were, is that not Hegel as well?
It makes descriptions of Hegel probably because he's one of the most cited philosophers.
Yes, your arguments are premised on Hegel, right? Just to be clear.
I'd argue they're based on his approach to philosophy in specific ways.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We'll take a question.
Yeah.
Let's talk about civil conflict.
Yeah.
If regions are breaking off, the Sewell region specifically, how does that lead to how does one region breaking off lead to a great power war?
Well, it's not just like, okay, yeah, sure, one region breaks off, there's a lot of conflict over that, that leads to a civil war within Somaliland. The issue is that a civil war is a massive concern for great powers in the region because they have their own military bases near Somaliland. That's really scary because when there's a civil war and a huge conflict going around and your bases are at risk, you're probably going to be scared, and one miscalculation is that per Claire draws in the great powers, which leads to some sort of an extinction scenario. Can I take a question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, just to where does the philosophy come from? Like, can you explain to me like how they came up with it?
How they came up with it? They probably coming up with it by citing a variety of sources and a variety of authors drawn from throughout the history of philosophy in that canon.
Okay. We'll take some running prep. We've got 3 minutes. Okay, wait, can you condense this? It doesn't work on my computer. Actually, I'll just look that. Yeah. 235 left.
Cool.
Okay, I'll send it off. It might be a 2 off. If I don't read the second off, I'll say that and then.
Yes.
You want another sheet?
And we'll just follow it.
And then I'll send it marked off afterwards.
Great.
Do 2 then our case.
2 off, then yeah. Yeah, it might be a 2 off. I'm gonna read the first off. If I don't read the second off, I'll indicate and then I'm done.
Cool.
Okay.
That's all. You want to load where I can.
Okay, actually, yeah, I could put it on the chase.
Just got talk.
I still don't have it.
Let me know when you.
Okay, just did. I'm gonna open it.
Don't have it yet. Oh, just kidding. I do have it.
One-off debaters must not reframing and endorses Hegel dialectic theory of truth. To be clear, do not endorse Hegel violation. The first card is literally explaining Hegel's theory, and every piece of evidence is in context of Hegel, and they concede and prosper that their arguments are heavily dependent on Hegel. That's terrible standards. First, Hegel is bracency is literally in favor of slavery. Jackson 20. Hegel pronounces the African an animal, denying the existence of African rational capability. Trade at 19. Hegel complains Africans see nothing unbecoming in slavery. Quite literally, for Hegel, Africans have to remain enslaved. This links into fairness because when racist authors are introduced in broad debaters, particularly those from marginalized communities, feel unwelcome in a space that doesn't condemn bigotry, making marginalized debaters feel uncomfortable as a direct link to fairness. Secondhand theories are also premised on racism. Albert 20. Off-on Hegel's dialectic philosophy of interaction is inseparable from racism. The origin of self-consciousness and problems that Hegel believes that Black and Indigenous people have a dormant dialectic and thus cannot be in the dialectic process towards freedom. Heredity 19 further. Hegel's conclusion is that Africans remain at the irrational stage of racialism. The reasoning is more than a matter of Eurocentrism. For radical philosophy, racism is a priority. Crossed by the fairness born on the first standard and education that legitimizes racism is terrible education. But third, Hegel historically justified terrible atrocities. Rapana 2006. Hegel's dialectic allows globalists to lead men back into superstition, racist, and unreasonable age of imperial global dominance. Hegel's logic, the only way to protect people from slavery is to become the slave trader. If it's empirically true, Hegel has led to racist and imperial outcomes and probably outweighs anything debaters can come up with and argue. History breaks the clash on voters. First, fairness is better because unfair arguments arbitrarily skew your evaluation of the round and a perceived substance because it frames its evaluation. Also, debaters would put debate if it was unfair. With second, education is better. It's the only real reason schools fund debate. Also, if their arguments are uneducational, they're also wrong. Drop the debater. A to set a precedent for the best norms of debate. B to deter future abuse. C to rectify time loss running theory. And D, the round has been irreversibly skewed so we can't return to substance fairly. Default to competing interpretations because reasonability is arbitrary. There's no threshold for what is reasonable, so it requires intervention, which is bad because of course it's judges censor their opinions but arguments rather than evaluate who did the better debating. No RBIs. It chills theory for a couple reasons. First, we should be allowed to test legitimacy of the other team. We shouldn't lose for being wrong, or else nobody would ever risk checking abuse. Second, encourages good debates to be intentionally abusive. People will beat theory, and then when RBIs started, it's illogical. The RBIs also justifies winning because we were also fair. They shouldn't win just because they were fair. That's the baseline burden for everyone. Skip the fourth one. Theory comes first. You should know the rules of the game before you play the game. Theory for substance. Also, this literally proves his conceptualization of recognition is stupid and wrong. It is premised on the notion that certain groups are dormant, which is why they need someone European to recognize them to experience real freedom. Obviously, the argument that some groups are dialectically dormant is false, and therefore Hegel's theory is too. On Hegel proper. Wait. Okay. Skip the first few responses. Okay, first, international law is a myth for Hegel that justifies wars and disproves the app, or also this is case, I'm skipping the second half. Lottie 20. Recognition depends on arbitrary will. I law is fantasy, ceaseless turmoil of interest. Demand binding contracts, but states are not persons. The state is independent of other states. States do not even have the rights to exist, demised by external aggression, justification, absence of law. A state can't legitimize another state if states don't exist. But second, pleasure and pain are intrinsic value and disvalue. Only utilitarian explains why things matter. Moon 16, pleasure is intrinsically valuable and pain is intrinsically disvaluable. There's something undeniably good about pleasure and something undeniably bad about pain. Values, statuses of pleasure and pain are manifested in how we treat experiences in everyday reasoning. I can read this one. Okay, wait, let me just read it off here. Yeah. Somaliland deliberated internally and doesn't want recognition. It's on 21. The flood assumption is that people in Somaliland all support secession. Nothing can be further from the truth. There are 5 plans. Only one supports secession. Less than 20%. 80 do not call themselves Somalilanders and oppose secession. The recognition of Somaliland consequences could be dire. Doesn't members open a Pandora box and destabilize Africa, reeling from separatist jihadist insurrection. Williams evidence says that people in Somaliland need to legitimize itself as a state, meaning if people don't want to be a part of Somaliland, that bites their link. Fourth, epistemology is secondary to the plan's harm reduction and discuss endless debates of the cost of material improvements. Epistemological debate smacks of elitism and displays contempt for those daily struggle. What does efforts say to the oppressed? Does it speak to those who compromise policy? No, to support the problem-solving theory is bad. Does it abrogates any hope of solving realities? In what sense? Debate can toward a bit of epistemology that doesn't do anything.
Cool. We're gonna take prep. Okay, that's 135. Framing case, the first off, and then the neg in order. Is that good for everyone?
Sorry. Wait, so just to be clear, it's framing, case, the off, and then or case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, sorry, repeat that.
Framing, case, the off, your case. I guess framing will kind of answer their arguments in the way, like the order that they made them on our case. Uh, They say I was myth. I do not understand how this is responsive. We've made no arguments that say that it matters or is like important to our framework. Our argument is just that recognition of states is important, even if it is not important to Hegel. It's important to our framework. That is not responsive. Then they say pleasure and pain are universal. We need to understand how to maximize pleasure and pain. What sorts of things do cause pleasure and pain, and be able to weigh between those things, which we cannot do without our framework. Utilitarianism collapses. Only we're about a stable basis for pleasure and pain through institutional engagement and recognition. Multi-need 3. Hegel let the common good be deduced from abstract principle. Contingencies must be recognized in the social context. Responsive contingency identified in relation to individual wants, experiences, and their recognition. Wants and opinions are indispensable from the social context, and laws and rules are integral to the determination of the common good. In particular instances, the state will be well constructed. The interested citizens coincides with the general end, so that one can be satisfied and realized through the other. Institutions must be set up, and after saying circles before it discovers what is appropriate. Also, they've considered the Kronbach evidence, which takes out all of these arguments because it indicates that the only way to be in a good relationship to nuclear war and to our own existence is if we are able to create ethical life through discussions, etc. Also, they've conceded all of the evidence that indicates that we solve the DA, i.e., McIntyre, Williams, etc., because we have institutional engagement that allows people's voices to be heard, and they will get rid of things that are bad and are not in line with good forms of ethics. Then they tell you that there is no desire. One, independence of popular norms of election, even if it's not into our Somaliland, exercises authority and has sufficient legitimacy for recognition. Measure 22. The fact that your union is not evidence of Somaliland election control. Every country has groups that disagree with policy. What matters is authority. Somaliland routinely conducts elections in contested areas. There is presumed unanimity of opposition, which there is no evidence. Somaliland's referendum was on independence passed with 97% groups who win elections to set a country's direction. Cut the there. That's better than their Hassan evidence because that is from a Somali state news organization where we are setting an actual election, which proves what Somaliland wants too. What Somaliland wants is relevant only through mutual recognition can realize itself in relation to others to determine the good. 190. Self-certainty is gained through independence, so something external brought in harmony with the self-independence is negated. They achieve or attempt to achieve self-certainty through things prove adequate desired consequences. Always dependent on the new object cut there. Don't let them go for new responses here. They did not provide an alternative framework. You do not know how to weigh things outside the idea that we need to have institutions to weigh them. One, this takes out all of their framing claims because there is no way, or all of their theory claims because there is no way to understand if the theory is true, etc. If you do not first do our method of recognition. Two, they have not given a reason why theory is relevant in this debate. On the one, we haven't read primary Hegel. Others cite Hegel, but so do yours in answering them. There is no reason that we endorse his method more. Just because our authors have taken an approach to his method does not mean that we are directly Hegel, which means it is arbitrary to try to punish us for doing that. It is also unpredictable to force us to defend every aspect of the personal lives of everybody that we have cited in our authors. They say specific to his philosophy. I urge you to find a place where R1AC has actively done what they have critiqued. If they are not able to prove that the 1AC itself was actively racist, there is no way to vote on this argument. Two, our theory is distinct from Hegel's actions. If you can't prove it, then it's not a voting issue. Three, us realizing that Hegel's racism was bad literally proves our framework. Their concession of the framework is so damning because it proves that we are a prereq and we uplayer all of the theory claims because we deliberated over time and came to more ethical conclusions about the inherent value of every life, which proves that we are true. Thus, the counterinterpretation is just let debaters read like arguments influenced by Hegel. Those are all standards for it. The DA. One institution solve all the DA's multilateral coordination prevents great power wars or democracy laws, mad and political structure. Bailey 19. That's right for coordination between nations increases such as the threshold for solving global problems, violence and decrease dramatically, reduction even several ways, beginning with the first state centralized governments, norms against war spreading of democracy cut through there. To empirics prove only recognition and internal deliberation create the conditions necessary to resolve conflict in Somaliland. Well said 11. A constitution for Somaliland marks the conclusion of the distinct state, which is state formation. The period culminated in a major conference at which agreements were reached. Cut through there. That impacts on the DA wars is an unfortunate event, but it is a form of interstate recognition that is inevitable in establishing the future. Mackay and Levine 10. War is not an accident of history about setting material differences, nor security wars about its necessity of state-making process, the expression of state identity through violence facilities, not a unified national consensus about states seeking recognition from other states, war creates the motivation for state formation, the institutions necessary for acts. War demands sacrifice for the sake of the whole, values and commitments are our hands. Cut the card there, that takes out all of their arguments because it's double bind. Either A, we are right about the Williams and McIntyre evidence, in which case institutions just solve back on their arguments because they get rid of the bad components, or B, there is actually war, but it always gets de-escalated because our argument is that it is a form of recognition and people will always sit down and negotiate it out, etc. Cool. Okay, cool.
Okay, so how does the app change the way that like us people in this room are able to, I don't know, solve problems?
I don't know how that's relevant.
Wait, so you made an argument that your K uplayer's theory because we can't start to like evaluate the in-round abuse. Why is that?
Our argument is that if you have not considered, so our argument is that you need institutional recognition in order to evaluate those certain things. We just made a framing claim.
So how is
we have made a
institutional
framing
recognition
claim
in Somaliland going to allow us to evaluate the claims we're making in this round?
Our argument is that we made a framing claim that said that the only way to deduce truth is through interaction, recognition, and the sublimation of error. Your argument, you have made fact claims, i.e., your author is this, etc., which we have said cannot be true. Can I have a question?
No, you're not answering mine. I get how you're starting this process of like institution building or whatever in Somaliland. How does that like affect us in this debate round or like the judges and their ability to like evaluate this round?
Wait, our argument says that institutions are always necessary. This sort of interaction and the sublimation of truth is always necessary.
Like, do this. Like, how does you guys getting the ballot allow like the judges in this round to start to like, I don't know, like develop institutions or start like this truth finding process?
That's not the argument. The argument is that there is no way to know that your theory claim is correct because it is not accounted for the possibility of its wrongness.
Yeah, how does the app solve that? How does like, I don't know, building an institution in Somaliland solve like the inability?
It does not solve knowing whether your framing claim is correct. We just say you cannot vote on the framing claim because it is not correct, because it is not established, or because it is not accounted for the possibility of its wrongness. And I have a question.
All right, sure.
What specifically in the 1AC was directly problematic? What, like, can you pull a specific line?
Wait, yeah. Like the first sentence of your K is literally citing Hegel. I can pull it up.
Wait, okay. How has that specifically done something problematic?
Wait, so the evidence that we read in our auth that you guys didn't respond to is just the act of citing, endorsing, and going off of Hegel's ideologies has perpetuated racism and like horrible ideologies in the real world. That's precedent and definitely breaks the clash on probability. You're just making the claim that there's no harms to like citing his evidence in your authors. We read evidence that says there are like tangible harms to doing that.
Okay, can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
We've read this app like 2 times before. Did bad stuff happen from that?
Wait. First of all, I don't know if bad things happened after that. I'm not sure. But if you're making the claim that after reading this K in 2 rounds, we haven't seen anything racist, no like racist ideas can be reproduced, like that's not responsive to our argument and like definitely a horrible thing. Like the more you reproduce like bad arguments like that, the more we'll see like the effects of it. I'll take a question. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about like the app or the off, right?
Yeah.
Why is like citing Hegel not as bad as like, or like how is like citing Hegel not as bad as like endorsing or like different from endorsing his ideas?
Because we are not
your authors are doing.
I am not GWF Hegel. I am just somebody that has taken an approach to his philosophy. Thinks parts of it could be useful, parts of it might not be.
We don't accept the whole.
Reproduce his ideologies, isn't that?
We don't reproduce his ideology. Our argument is that we have taken a stance relative to his ideology. Like that is not. We have not reproduced.
Not what your authors are saying.
Okay, we'll take some running thoughts. 8 seconds of prep left. Order's just gonna be like order's just gonna be like shell and then actually shell and Hegel proper too.
Wait, Shell then Hegel proper?
Yeah.
Besides.
We'll take another second. Yeah. Take another second. All right.
Yeah.
Everyone good?
Yep.
Extend the interpretation. Debaters must not reframing that endorses Hegel's dialectical theory of truth. To be clear, do not endorse Hegel. Extend the violation. First card in their case is literally explaining Hegel's dialectical theory, and every piece of evidence is in context of Hegel, and they concede in first cross for that their arguments are heavily dependent on Hegel. That's pretty terrible. Extend this. Extend the standards. First, Hegel is racist and he's in favor of slavery. Actually, Loki, we're gonna go for the second standard that his theories are premised on racism. That is the standard that goes cold conceded in the last teacher is probably terminal defense on anything they tell you. The issue is extend the Albert evidence that tells you off of them, which is what they title their Can of Disco, which is probably another link. Hegel's dialectical theory, dialectical philosophy of interaction is inseparable from racism. The origin of self-consciousness. The problem is that Hegel believes that Black and Indigenous people have a dormant dialectic and thus cannot begin the dialectical process towards freedom. And further, Terada explains Hegel's conclusion is that Africans were admitted in irrational state of racialism. The reasoning is more than a matter of Eurocentric for radical philosophy. Racism is an a priori. What does this mean? This means every argument they have made in their speeches about how they shouldn't be forced to depend on, or they shouldn't be forced to defend their author's personal life do not matter because they are defending the philosophy of their author, and the philosophy itself is fundamentally racist. They are defending a racist philosophy. Okay, yeah, specifically that links to fairness in education because education is really, really bad if you're like disseminating terrible education that's like a racist, and also it kills fairness because debaters should not be forced to debate in a space that allows bigoted authors to continue reading, bigoted authors to continue. I'm gonna go there. Okay. Yeah, also, yeah. And fairness for consider evaluation of the round 2 prioritize it. Yeah, no worries, it's fine. Okay. On their responses, first, they tell you that there's no way to understand, there's no way to, or they give you this like up layering stuff. They're saying there's no way to evaluate the theory if you're not looking at it through the lens of Hegel. Their evidence is about Hegel's state recognition of Somaliland. Please explain to me how that actually affects your evaluation of the theory around the pre-fiat level. They are not telling you how affirming or looking at it through the lens of Hegel does that. But secondly, we're going to make the argument that they have conceded that the argument they read is systematically unfair because they should not force debaters who are people of color debaters to debate arguments that are literally about biased authors who are literally bigoted and racist that kills the fairness in the round from the get-go. That is a prerequisite to evaluating anything else in the round because the round is skewed from the get-go. You literally could not have evaluated their 1AC if we were not able to fairly respond to it. You could probably break the clash on that level on the empiric. They have conceded that reading Hegel actively led to racism if you're like confused on the prereq debate. Then specifically, they tell you why do they have to endorse it. Our evidence talks about Hegel too. No, their evidence is actively talking about how Hegel's philosophy and they're advocating that these philosophy is what you should use to frame the round. We are not doing that. Then what? I'm doing it. No, wait, what? On that we meet the one evidence that we read is international law doesn't exist, pointing out a logical contradiction in Hegel's philosophy. Yeah, then they say like then they say it's unpredictable because every aspect they should be forced to defend every aspect of Hegel's personal life. It's not his personal life, it's his literal theory. We specifically tell you this. They say our theory is distinct from Hegel's actions. It's not Hegel's actions, it's the philosophy that they're literally defending. Then they say Hegel is bad. Hegel being bad like proves their framework or whatever, or because they realized Hegel was racist. Okay, if you read the argument, you knew Hegel was racist because of your magical deliberation. That's pretty bad that you read a racist argument knowing it was so, but also like we can say we deliberated and realized that to drop the debater for norm setting, you should not allow racist arguments in the activity. That's terrible. You negate.
Okay. We're gonna take credit. Or do you want
Just up one.
Oh, up one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gonna go framing the off. Framing the the shell. On top, Nunzo has conceded disagreements are only resolvable through recognition, which means the only mechanism to work out the goodness of their framework or resolve who wins the debate is through ours. That makes us a prior question. You can just vote for the affirmative there. Then let's extend the framework. Claims that stem from ahistorical, non-institutional perspectives cannot be correct. Actual institutions are necessary to incorporate different perspectives, which means alternative frameworks cannot account for the possibility of their wrongness or not universally true. That's Nunzo. Two institutions link individuals to form societies where we can work towards a shared conception of the good because historical conditions determine the context in which we form our understanding ideas. Affirming the structure of institutions is like the AU is key. That's Wood and Newhouser also tells you that the having institutions are the best way to democratically synthesize multiple individual perspectives into one collective claim, which is how you arrive on truth in the first place. Third, the state gives meaning, and fourth, the lead to ethical norms that make life in the community meaningful and possible, which makes it a precondition for goodness. The framework is conceded, and so far as the framework is conceded, it becomes super hard to evaluate their offense. Then, on to the extension of the AF proper. Go AF to recognize Somaliland within the institution of the AU. Only reciprocal recognition of states allows them to integrate understanding of each other into their ethical theories and gain insight into their essence through comparison and engagement. The AF is also conceded. You prefer substance outweighs here because it is good to educate ourselves on the topic and on the specifics of the matters at hand with Somaliland, which is the best way to actually engage in any kind of decolonial process, decolonial education. Then you prefer the AF to the shell because the Nunzo argument shows you have to evaluate our framing claim and vote for the affirmative off of creating recognition in order to evaluate anything about the debate in the first place, and because of the fact that we come before the shell off through the fact that the substantive arguments are the only frameable weighted offense to the round under the framework. Onto the off. It is super arbitrary. There is no basis to inform when endorsement crosses the line. They cite him too with the ILO evidence. There's no reason to discern approval of him versus disapproval. This is the big issue with their argument, which is that we are not citing primary Hegel. In fact, we are citing authors who are creating their own ideas in post-colonial context about post-colonial philosophy and incorporating post-colonial nations into a different order. But they are citing Hegel because he is the most cited philosopher in almost the history of Western philosophy, sans Kant, which is a clear reason why their attempt to put the genie back in the bottle is ultimately incredibly failed, which means it's impossible to actually derive any norm setting from their arguments. The fact is here. What?
Reserve framework.
Yes, which is another reason for our framework. There is no norm setting. Hegel's literally everywhere. It's impossible for them to undermine it. Then, lastly, us realizing Hegel's racism was bad proves our framework. Over time, we have deliberated and came to more ethical conclusions about the inherent value of every life. They massively don't understand this argument. Here's the thing. Hegel was racist, yes, in the 1700s. Modern Hegelians aren't. Why is that? Because we've engaged in a dialectical process of engaging in discourse with another through things like the Civil War and the abolitionist movement and the Civil Rights movement, which have led us to the conclusion that racism is super, super, super bad. That's a clear reason why, in order to arrive at that truth in the first place, to engage in the epistemological approach that Hegel provided for us and that our authors provide for us of engaging in process and discourse with another. That's terminal defense on any of their claims. The only way to make the thesis of their claims true is to work through our epistemology, affirm. Okay.
Already cross. Sorry?
Yeah.
You got it first.
Okay, wait. Let's talk about this. Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, you go.
Wait, so if the evidence you're reading in your case is literally citing Hegel's dialectic theory of truth and saying yeah, this is good, we should do more of this, whereas our evidence is just pointing out logical contradictions in his theory and ideology.
The red line is pretty.
Yeah,
does it say this is
your
good?
evidence is actively endorsing.
Where does it say his dialectic is good?
But your entire argument is we evaluate the round off of his dialectic. The implication is that his dialectic is obviously a good thing because you're saying you evaluate the round based on it.
Our argument is our framework extension was that claims that are uninstitutional or are ahistoric cannot be true, and thus recognition is true.
I'll read you guys the first line of your card. Hegel's dialectical theory of truth, by contrast, puts the subject in quite a different predicament. For in order to arrive at the truth, blah, 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 blah. It's literally citing Hegel's dialectical theory. It is explaining Hegel's dialectical theory. Your author isn't like making their own implication. It's literally just explaining Hegel.
Okay,
That's
one-
really bad. And it's his ideas. And the other part of it is you guys keep making this response like, oh, like if there's no bright line to what's endorsing Hegel. Like I'd say endorsing Hegel is literally conceding his literature is inherently racist. It's premised on racism, and then doubling down. And
What's the question?
wait, no, I'm just responding to your question, right?
You
said
you said the question.
Oh yeah, no, the question was like, yeah, the question was even if Hegel's like, the question was if Hegel or the question was about the ILA thing. Like we were making you guys made the argument in your last speech that like we link because we talk about ILA, whereas our evidence is pointing out a contradiction and yours is literally endorsing it. Why do we link?
Okay, our argument is that our authors take an approach to Hegelian philosophy. If you cannot prove that the 1AC is directly racist, i.e., that people feel harmed by our reading of the 1AC, like that something we have said is racist, then we should not lose.
Yeah, sorry, just like guys, you guys have like conceded the standard that the basis of the dialectical theory y'all are citing is racist. If that's the case, like the 1AC is racist.
No, that is different because you have not proven that something that the 1AC enacts is racist. Also, I want you to point me to a part of the 1AC that says we are Hegel's dialectical theory. We have given a set of arguments that are all disconnected from his dialectical theory.
Wait, I feel like this is so semantical though, because like every piece of evidence
of course it's semantic.
Wait, no, but I think it's like there needs to be like some rationality. Like every piece of evidence is talking about Hegel. I read you the line that literally says your first piece of evidence in the K, or first piece of evidence in the like framing literally is talking about Hegel's dialectical theory of truth. Like I don't know how much more obvious it can get, but we're going in circles. You can be questions.
Okay, sure. Jackson, you have something? It'll probably be on there.
What framework do we evaluate your shell under?
Like it's like a separate level because it's saying you shouldn't evaluate like substantive framing, instead like fairness issues in the round.
It's a different one.
And it's also a direct turn to your framing because it like, proves that it's bad.
So why does framework only apply to some parts of the round but not others?
Because they're on different levels.
Framing. Yeah, it is framing. We're saying that like you should
Frame the
prioritize
round
your
by-
rules instead of like the actual substance.
I don't think we have questions.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
Okay, it's gonna go the one off and then like I guess the implication will be off on the top. Extend the off debaters must not read framing that endorses Hegel's dialectic theory of truth. To be clear, do not endorse Hegel. Their violation, the first part is literally explaining Hegel's theory and saying that that is what like the entire rest of the card is based on. They concede in Crossfire that their arguments are heavily dependent on Hegel, meaning it is an endorsement of Hegel, where our evidence that we cited was just pointing out logical contradictions in Hegel, when it's not the same thing as endorsing it. Okay, on their response or extend the standards.
Just extend the
Okay, Hegel is racist. He's literally in favor of slavery, and then extend, and then this links into fairness because when racist authors are introduced in rounds debaters, particularly those from marginalized communities, feel unwelcome in a space that doesn't condemn bigotry, making marginalized debaters feel uncomfortable is a direct link to fairness. Their responses are horrible.
Extend the
Okay, his theories are also premised on racism. Albert 20, Hegel's dialectic philosophy of basically, they've conceded the fact that his philosophies are rooted in the fact that Black people are dormant and therefore cannot have to be recognized by like a white savior. That's a horrible theory to reproduce. Okay, their responses are horrible. They just say that we're also we're also citing Hegel as an author. Remember, there's a distinction between endorsing it, as they conceded in first Crossfire, whereas our evidence is pointing out logical contradictions in his philosophy. Also, they say that they meet because there's no bright line as to what actual endorsement is. But if their own evidence is literally saying that based on Hegel's dialectic theory of truth, they're formulating all of these philosophies as to what should happen in Somaliland, that is literally an endorsement. It is what the app should be according to their argument. They say that deliberation is why we know that their framing is true. No, we're talking about other parts of their framing, building institutions and recognition of Somaliland premised on extremely racist things. Then break the clash on the framing. They just say that you have to evaluate ethics before you can evaluate whether it's true that this is actually bad. But no, remember, they conceded that we had evidence that proves that reproducing Hegel's philosophy resulted in greater amounts of racism in society, which proves that it's actually bad and it's not doing anything good. This directly turns their framing, because if you know that the root of his philosophies are premised on like racist underpinnings, it's false. What? Yeah, I'll also drop the debater for to incentivize norm setting and debate. This turns all of their framing, because you cannot evaluate whether or not their framing is true as long as you know that the root of the philosophy itself was based on racist premises and that aren't true in the real world.
Okay, cool. We don't have credits, so I'm just looking down. It'll be the AF and then this shit. Everybody good? At this point, it's pretty clear that we're winning our case. Claims that ahistoric or non-institutional perspectives cannot be correct. One actual institution are necessary to incorporate different perspectives. Each alternative frameworks cannot account for the possibility that wrongness are not universally true. Two, institutions link individuals to form societies where we can work toward a shared conception of the good, because historical conditions determine the context in which we form our understandings and ideas, and forming the structure of institutions like the AU is the most universal end. That's wood. Three, the state gives meaning and enforceability to ethical norms that make it life in a community meaningful and give possibility of precondition of goodness. Thus, vote AF to recognize Somaliland within the institution of the AU. Only reciprocal recognition of states allows them to integrate their understandings of each other into ethical theories and gain insight into their essence through comparison and engagement. The show. First, they've conceded that they cannot weigh it underneath our framework, i.e., per the Nuzzo evidence concession, we are only able to come to understandings via recognition of different perspectives, etc., which means they cannot account for the possibility of their own arguments' wrongness. They cannot account for the possibility that their arguments are incorrect, which means it is outside of our framework. We are the only side that has provided a framework. Just because they're able to implicate it on ours does not matter. One, or they conceded that that case outweighs, because it is good to have education about different things that is going on in the world. I know that you don't want to make a decision on that, but it was conceded in the last speech. So unable to vote for them. Two, they have conceded that our authors are all post-colonial and have changed his theory, even if Hegel as a person was not good, our authors have taken an approach to his theory that is not directly him. They just say that we endorse him, but no, we meet because our authors are talking about specific perspectives relative to him. They literally say in their case that it is not that Hegel that is problematic, and their only citation is from Nuzzo, who's the person talking about ways to work out claims. Then they have conceded the only reason that we know Hegel's racism is wrong is because over time we have deliberated and figured out that have made ethical conclusions about the inherent value of every life, takes out all of their arguments because it proves that even if Hegel as a person was bad, the overall end of Hegel's framework is good because it encourages people to increase the total value to life. It encourages us to come together and realize that things like racism, etc., are wrong, which proves that our framework is true in the long run. They cannot implicate any of their arguments to our framework because we have not directly cited him, and our framework concedes that that racism is bad. Good round.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all. Enjoy if you judge more rounds, or good luck for your kids. Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm gonna be honest in a second. I'm just